In the magical realm, alchemy is a core skill. Rusty, a sorcerer, skillfully meets his daily quota of distilled water. This is essential for making potions and transforming magical creatures. Rusty's distilled water is different because he infuses it with magical energy, making it a superior product. Having finished his work on schedule, Rusty stops his timer and prepares to spend the afternoon doing research he enjoys. The mood shifts when the alchemist realism calls to him. The unhealthy, smug man sneers and starts insulting Rusty. Realism mocks Rusty for working in the basic research department, saying it achieves nothing significant or profitable. Clearly, realism understands the purpose of research, which is to explore and discover. Calm and unfazed, Rusty endures the taunts because this is not his first time facing them. Realism tells him to visit the president, who wants to discuss some matters. Rusty, the talented alchemist, walks to the president's office and thinks about his role on the team and the constant mockery he endures. Realism, unlike Rusty, works in the profitable arms department, so others join in belittling Rusty for not bringing in much revenue. Rusty arrives at the president's office and learns the president has decided to eliminate the basic research departments. Eliminate the budget entirely, effectively dissolving it. The president defends this by noting the department is not profitable. Assign Rusty minor tasks for other departments, effectively making him their errand boy. The president tells him to be grateful for any work, saying it's a favor. He blows pipe smoke into Rusty's face and dismisses him. Rusty stays silent during the exchange, seeing no point in arguing. Rusty leaves the room clutching a letter, humiliated and disappointed in himself. On his way back to his quarters, he remembers that the president's pipe, like many other tools in use, was made by the research department. Rusty sits in his chair, staring at the ceiling. After the new president took over, the department's budget and staff were drastically cut, and he handled the extra work and stress on his own. A ring from his phone snaps him back to reality and signals a new message, so he checks it. Even the telecommunications device had been built by his department, showing how badly they were treated, but some good news arrived and lifted his spirits. Colin sent the message. He was a close friend from his school days, and we haven't met since graduating. After excelling in a recent war, she became a successful warrior, but was stuck in a rusty, neglected research role under an indifferent president. Memories of school with Colin wash over him. Once they turned their classroom into a jungle and later wrote a long apology to their teacher for the prank. Smiling at the memory, Rusty opens her letter and reads Holland's warm welcome and deep respect. She says she has been granted a dominion in the Borderland and now needs his help to develop it. Rusty faces an important choice because of this offer. He can remain in his rundown apartment and endure harsh treatment from Mr. Fatty and Mr. I don't give a damn. Or he can give up everything except Tala's offer and join her. With a bright smile and a spark in his eyes, Rusty looks out the window and decides to quit his miserable job in this dreadful place, eager to rediscover joy with Tala. Rusty has made his decision and begins packing his things, remembering that he was the most senior in the department before the new president took over, which explains his lingering attachment to the workplace. Former President Master Hall Hammer built his own success and valued basic research. Working together, they accomplish remarkable feats. After the government changed, Master Hall Hammer was demoted and replaced by a former official, and the workplace has since gotten worse. Rusty approaches the president's office and stops when he hears voices through the door. Realism and the president are reviewing the research department's budget. Realism's excessive praise of the president is almost comical. That sounds like a third grader trying too hard to please, and it's grating. I, irritated but composed, knocked on the Rusty door, and the two inside were annoyed to find it was Rusty. Release their hostility through shouting and toxic attitudes. Unfazed, Rusty boldly slides his resignation letter onto the president's desk, saying he's done with them. With a single act of defiance, Rusty makes a bold move that earns him widespread respect. Stunned by the unexpected action, the president reads the resignation letter realistically. With the department dissolved, Rusty may leave at any time without having to train a replacement. Visibly frustrated while trying to stay calm, the president can't hide his irritation. Now the president tells Rusty that if he does not appreciate their generosity, he should leave the association immediately, speaking in a haughty tone. Rusty leaves the president's office and then exits the building. He stops to admire a grand painting of an alchemist in a dungeon. It brings back many memories, but he says goodbye and walks away. Outside, Rusty breathes in the fresh air, overjoyed to be free from the association's pressures and troubles. Summoning his powers, he calls forth his 8-legged hippopotamus beast. Setting off toward Talon, he senses a hint of danger in the air. Even his hippo hears a strange sound in the distance. Rusty tells his beast to stay alert for bandits. Startled by an unconscious figure in the park, he stopped and kept his distance. Rusty approaches and recognizes the uniform as that of a night priest, a devotee of the goddess of vengeance. Rusty flips the unconscious figure over and sees a cursed pattern on her face, showing she is under a malicious spell. Another damsel in distress scene sets the stage for an exciting chapter. Instinctively, Rusty activates his powers and starts a transcription, causing a pamphlet to hover over the girl's body and reveal the nature of her condition. Rusty studies the pamphlet and the detour. He concludes the girl's life isn't in danger. The curses are manageable, and he could get professional help, but seeing her in such pain. Refusing to let her suffer, Rusty takes action himself, quickly reviewing the diagnosis and finding the fever is caused by poison in her system. He finds a wound on her flank where the poison entered. It appears to have been inflicted by a familiar. Rusty searches his bag for an antidote but finds none. He decides to make one. He orders his hippo to guard the injured girls. As he goes out to gather the necessary ingredients, Rusty hurries through the forest looking for the plants he needs, but Sin becomes short of breath and pauses to regain his strength. Being confined in the association has weakened his stamina, leaving him panting like an old man after only a few minutes. He pulls out a stamina potion and drinks it. A surge of energy fills you as luck leads you to medicinal herbs near a stream. Riding through the spot, Rusty is puzzled, remembering it used to be greener but now looks depleted, likely from regular harvesting. Regardless, Rusty gathers the plants and flowers needed to make the antidote. A simple transmutation will be enough for her condition. Power radiates from him, lifting the ingredients, water droplets, and a scroll so they float together and form the perfect cure. After making antidotes his whole life, this task is effortless for Rust. Potion ready, he rushes back to the poisoned girls and hears heavy stomps as he nears, finding his hippo leaping and smashing something dark and grotesque on the ground. Rusty stays back, careful not to get caught under the hippo's stomping legs. The hippo lands one last jump, crushing the creature under its 8 legs. Approaching the now con scene, Rusty feels relieved too. His beast has killed the familiar that likely chased the girls, probably to finish her off. Kneeling, he puts the antidote on the girl's wound, and it heals quickly as bright sparkles surround her. Her eyes open, instincts kicking in, she rises with her hands reaching for her sword. Tense shoulders and a wary gaze mark her as a highly trained knight, and she studies Rust to judge whether he's a foe. Rusty points at the dead familiar and says it was the enemy. Glancing back briefly, she asks who he is. Rusty speaks steadily, begins to say he's from the association, then corrects himself smoothly to say he's just a wandering alchemist. The word alchemist sparks the girl's curiosity, and she steps toward him. Lingering poison saps her strength, nearly causing her to collapse. Rusty tells her not to push herself and offers the antidote. She eyes it and asks the cost of his help, and she is right. Unused to being paid for helping others, Rust hesitates and scratches his head as he recalls his time at the association, looking slightly puzzled. But he tells the girls he helped her get out of goodwill. Tala introduces herself as a knight devoted to the goddess of vengeance and the third of 3 swords, believes the antidote is very valuable, and insists there must be a way to repay him for his kindness. Rusty proposes a simple plan, and because he is traveling to the northern border to work under Tala, asks her to lend the strength of her sword to protect him if he encounters trouble. Tala agrees and shows her blade, saying it can cut through any threat he faces. This deal looks heavily one-sided, with Rusty making only a simple potion, while Tala pledges her formidable sword to his aid. Some would call the trade wildly uneven. Rusty doesn't linger on it and watches Tala finish the antidote, removing the poison from her. Then he hops onto this hippo and says goodbye to her. Holding the potion container, Tala watches it gleam in the sunlight. Convinced it was a legendary elixir that saved her life, she now feels indebted to the mysterious man. After completing her quest for vengeance, she will visit him in the north to repay him generously. Night falls and Rust, still on his journey, decides to camp. He dismounts his hippo, tells it to rest, and builds a campfire. Leaving Tala, he traveled north without stopping until night fell. Admiring the starry sky even as vast darkness covers the horizon, he sits by the fire and feels a rare calm. Since joining the association, Russ Knight has been confined to a lab far from nature's beauty. Pulling out a map, he checks his progress toward the Borderland. They found their next-to-last village before reaching the Northern Territory. Russ studies the map as his hippo tries to sneak a nibble. Quick to react, he playfully tells his beast to settle down. He eats his portable rations, his reliable travel companions. The next morning, they reach Toma, a rundown village nothing like what Rusty expected. Nearly abandoned, it resembles Tala's domain. Sending his hippo back, Rusty explores the area. Suddenly a man appears behind him, startling Rusty and asking who he is. Rusty introduces himself as a traveling alchemist, and the man fixates on the word alchemist. He urges Rusty to walk with him to meet the village chief. Seeing most houses deserted and crumbling, Rusty feels disheartened. Until a well-kept home with woven branches at the entrance catches his eye. Rusty asks whether this is the chief's house and where they can find a kajero tree. The man ignores him, pounding on the door and calling the chief to meet the alchemist. An elderly man appears, using a wooden cane. The man tells the chief he's brought an alchemist. The man admits he can't be sure Rusty is an alchemist, though he appears to be, which reflects how desperate the village has become. Rusty shows his ID to prove he is an alchemist. The chief inspects the medallion and asks whether Rusty holds a high rank. Never having considered it, Russ realizes he is a highly ranked alchemist. Many people at the association were as well. The chief asks Rusty to come into his home because he wants to ask him a question. They receive tea and a large mug. Relieved, Rusty sips tea after days on field rations. Quickly, the chief asks Rusty whether he has any traditional magic crystals. Slightly puzzled, Rusty agrees to help find or make the crystals. They ask why the old-fashioned ones are needed, and the chief says the magic guns were upgraded about a year ago during the war. Wait, why do you need guns, old man? The chief explains that both the old and new magic guns were supplied to Zala, a wild-looking guy from the start, and he complains that the new guns were a complete scam. Zala still pulls out both types of guns. The chief describes how those weapons kept helpless villagers safe from beasts. Owners favored the 32 gun for its fuel efficiency and excellent features. The newest one model had many problems. The device was expensive, the crystals broke often, and it was unreliable. Even worse, the maker stopped supplying the old crystals, so villagers had to buy the new model and waste money. As a result, beast attacks increased and more people died. Rusty hears their concerns and agrees to create old crystals. Instead, he asks Kodro to leave his payment. The chief and Zal share puzzled looks, but agreed to guide him to the cargo trees. When they arrive, the chief tells everyone to collect as many cargo materials and fruits as they can. Once finished, Rusty gets to work and pulls out 3 scrolls. Watch him show off his skills. He knows magic stones come from beasts. Another method uses atmospheric elements. Mixing an anicaps fruit, he purifies the elements and forms a pure diamond. Rusty explains that magic crystals have 3 standards: size, output, and capacity, and those must align. Otherwise, they will not work. Rusty remembers the standards for old-style crystals and applies them effectively. Sealed inside the kegger fruit, the magic elements form a magic crystal. Surrounded by light, power, and brilliance, Rusty works with skill and confidence. Finishing his work, he holds the crystal, proud of his success. Villagers behind him cheer and admire his magic, their crystals ready. Rusty hands one to the chief and tells him to load the 32 and try it. The chief nods, takes the gun and inserts the crystal, then points it at the sky and fires. The gun fires, sending a bullet at incredible speed. It tears a huge hole in the sky as clouds swirl around it. The sight amazes everyone and they cheer. Now they can live without fear of beasts and magical creatures. Thrilled to see the villagers celebrating his creation, Rusty smiles and feels at peace. Then he begins making more crystals, and after an hour of hard work, produces enough to supply the villagers for years. This crystal's power would be twice what the market offers. The chief's eyes widened at the mention of such an extraordinary offer. He cannot imagine that kind of wealth, because his people have endured generations of poverty with no one to help. The chief begins thinking about how to use all these crystals and becomes absorbed in the possibilities. The chief soon calms down and orders everyone to collect the crystals and bring them to the village. Rusty gets the chief's attention and asks for a private word about an urgent matter, and the chief agrees to speak privately. Gesturing for Rusty to follow him home, he tells the villagers to clear the rubble, but Rusty steps in and finishes the job in moments. They arrive at the chief's house, where Rusty is given a cup of tea and a mug, and their poverty is obvious as Rusty sips the warm tea, a pleasant feeling washing over him. Maybe this is the reward for a day's hard work. Setting the mug down, he gets serious. The chief looks tense, bracing for bad news. But Rusty Consum said it was not a serious issue. He just wants to discuss their next steps. The chief feared Rusty would demand payment for all the crystals. The chief feels as if he has just escaped a crisis. Rusty explains he has produced enough crystals to sustain a village for years and asks whether other villages still rely on outdated magical crystals. The chief says every village in this isolated area urgently needs these crystals and Rusty could be a great help. Rusty poses confidently and says he will do business with a new nighttime realm called Colin, where he plans to grow his crystal trade. Hearing Colin's name makes the chief sit up straight. Rusty is a skilled alchemist and has ties to some of his era's most formidable, renowned warriors. The chief asks if this is the same Colin who can knock down 3 armored men with one sword swing. Though she looks frail, she has strength surpassing the greatest fighters and earned a nickname for it. Rusty cuts them off, refusing to hear the nickname again. He is tired of hearing it repeated countless times. That nickname makes his old academy friends sound monstrous. The chief apologizes and Rusty returns to the topic. He intends to discuss this privately with the chief's lord. Creating a new domain comes with costs and challenges. Also, he still hasn't discussed this with Colin, who may have her own plans for him. Taking another sip of tea, Rusty thinks Colin and the village lord might work out a deal or plan that helps him and the villagers. Rusty made enough magic crystals for everyone. The chief could offer some to the lord to secure a favorable agreement for us. Russ's mind works like a well-oiled machine, and he asks for it immediately. Get pen and paper from the chief to write a letter to a friend. A friend from their academy days is now in the military because the situation involves guns and magic crystals. Rusty expects objections from others that could block his path to success. People like Realism, whose business and livelihood depend on the crystals and guns Rusty supplies, could come to a halt. Realism refuses to share his achievements with others, especially Russ, whom he has deeply insulted. Rusty stays unfazed by that fool because he is focused on building an empire and cannot afford to waste time on petty, insignificant people. He knows the crystals might eventually spread beyond the region and draw the attention of Realism and his crew. If discovered, the military could intervene and the outcome would be unpredictable, so Rusty finishes the formal letter and rolls it up. He seals it with the initials on his pendant to show his high rank. About to leave, Rusty is urged by the chief to stay the night. Rusty politely declines, eager to get back on the road quickly. Vesey steps out of the house and villagers crowd around him, pleading for help with their tasks. He feels overwhelmed and rusty, and the feeling quickly rises in his head. Popo hurries out of the village to avoid being delayed. These villagers are very intrusive. During his travels, Rusty is surprised by the lack of beasts or creatures in the wasteland, leaving him unsure what monsters might trouble him. A monster suddenly attacks, and Popo's sharp senses kick in. Crushing the monster's tentacles, he defeats it instantly. Rusty denounces Popo and collects the dead monster's remains, which could come in handy later. Consulting his map, he sees he will soon reach a body of water. From that point, the journey will be short. Rusty reaches the lake and plans to rest. Popo's restlessness keeps him on edge. A shimmer moves through the water, casting a soft magical glow as Rusty steps closer to investigate. A small lizard darts out, nearly grazing his face as it struggles to escape a monster's slippery tentacles. An unlucky lizard becomes trapped and gives Rusty a frightened look. He wonders if a child was turned into a lizard, since it has no human eyes or emotions. Rusty holds back from helping or touching the creature because many mimic human emotions to deceive and attack, and in the wild only the strong survive while the weak become prey. The lizard's eyes still pull at Russ. He orders Popo to strike the tentacles and free the lizard at once. Without a second command, Popo leaps into the air like an 8-lated ballerina, weighing over 500 kilograms, and smashes the tentacle holding the lizard, which retreats into the water injured. Rusty picks up the severed tentacle to use later and checks the lizard, which does not respond to his gentle prodding. Clearly, the lizard has reached its limit and is completely drained of energy. The main character uses his ability to examine the creature. The issue is a beast, so he can't pinpoint the exact cause, but he unlocks new parts of his skill set and finds the lizard is severely exhausted. Its mitochondria may not be working properly. Rusty tells a weakened Popo, drained from using too much energy to avoid being hunted, to stay vigilant. The small beast dives into the water to fight a catfish monster, while Rusty looks for a way to restore the lizard's health. Victorious, Hippo shows the defeated catfish monster to his master like a prize. Next, Rusty applies a potion to the lizard and watches its energy gradually return. Mitochondrial activity has clearly improved and may be above normal. He considers leaving the lizard behind but pauses, worried that after all his efforts to save it, another predator could come and kill it. Rusty decides to take the unconscious lizard with him for the rest of his journey, cradling it in his lap. Pulling out his map, he plans the rest of the route and realizes he must follow the river from the pond to reach his destination. Rusty arrives at a campsite with tents in a circle, assuming it belongs to Colin, but Hippo stops and looks uneasy. This stops any further progress. Russ, no fool, senses that something is wrong. He dismounts his mount, raises his medallion, and loudly declares he is Russ, a master-ranked alchemist whose sect brings together people seeking truth. He travels to this land at the invitation of the knight Colin. Not foolish, Rusty can seem a little unhinged, shouting into the air while waiting for his medallion. Two girls suddenly appear, their faces partly covered with cloths, looking like a one-eyed cat with its tongue out. Well done, Colin, very smooth. One named Gerald draws her sword but greets Russ. Monsters in the area can mimic humans, so strict precautions are necessary. Rusty finally understood why Hippo had been so uneasy, sensing danger from a distance. If Hippo had not stopped, the girls might have attacked them. The main character tucks his medallion into his pocket, showing confidence in front of the two girls. The girls were impressed that he noticed them so quickly. Keeping his cool, one Gerald senses a strong aura from Hippo, and Whirly wonders if a monster is on the beast's back. An attack almost happens before her sister, Eerie, steps in. Rusty accepts full responsibility for the lizard and assures everyone it poses no threat. The girl relaxes. Meanwhile, he notices the younger sister has a unique visual ability. One may see great distances, while the older one seems able to judge the strength of people or beasts. Following introductions, the girls lead Rusty to a tent where he's. It's striking to see so many people operating a massive communications device, and all the data appears centralized at the headquarters. He is impressed by the high-quality work and the skilled employees here. Watching the operations, Colin calls from behind and hurries over to him, clearly excited. Colin looks unchanged, as strikingly beautiful as ever. She steps toward Rusty and takes his hand in a firm grip. He winces in pain. Poor Russ has gone years without female company. Colin is thrilled to see Rusty again after so long and teases him about looking older. Rusty is not pleased by the remark but stays composed, while Colin's vibrant presence shines. Gesturing at the two, she asks if her masked girls gave him any trouble. Rusty realizes Colin set up their encounter, probably hoping for a bit of excitement. That appears to be her idea of fun. Rusty scratches his head and insists there was no trouble with the girls because he's a lover, not a fighter. Cut the fuss, Russ. Sorry, I meant. Colin smiles. She softly invites him to join her for a tour of the camp. Colin is giving off strong, nurturing vibes. The world is full of magical forces that affect soil, animals, and monsters, yet humans remain unaffected, so explain why. Back at camp, Colin effortlessly lifts a whole table, with one hand to make room for her, and Rusty to sit and talk business. Ordering Rohan to fetch tea, she makes sure they are alone in the tent. Rusty senses his old friend is about to tell him something serious. Jokingly, he says he expected the job to be relaxing and to involve extracting magical elements from the ground. Colin shrugs off the joke, agrees it's partly true, but the role involves more than it looks. She calls him the Academy's genius, a nickname from their school days. Russ, hiding his embarrassment, asks what is troubling her. Colin fiddles with her gloves before explaining he must treat the disease spreading through the camp first, then investigate its source. Tasks clear, Rusty stands and is led to his tent. Along the way, Rusty notices a hostile mood. People glare at him and ignore his greetings. They seem closed off, and he concludes the disease is endemic. This means newcomers to the camp gradually become ill and start showing symptoms. At the tent, Rusty feels relieved that the two girls are kinder to him than the others, but he is mistaken. The younger sister warns him sharply not to humiliate Lady Colin, adding that she will not forgive him, and then the sisters disappear. Rusty knows he'll have to work harder than he expected to earn the camp's trust. Entering the spacious tent, he finds it empty of furniture, just as he expected from Colin, who knows he prefers his own. Rusty conjures a carpet and a bean bag with his powers so the lizard can rest. The lizard is so exhausted that it has slept through the whole journey. Rusty then summons Manifest Rose, a transmuted beast that looks like a plant, but also resembles a hippo in elements of nature. He orders the rose to make a sturdy bed for the lizard so it can rest undisturbed. After that, Rusty has a bed made for the patients who will come to his tent for treatment. Once that's settled, he lets Rowan and Eerie bring patients in one at a time for care. He hears almost identical complaints: fatigue, body aches, and soreness. Rusty gives potions to ease their symptoms and help find the disease's cause. Side effects are possible, but he will address them later. For now, providing proper treatment is the priority. Rowan marvels that Rusty manages to treat nearly every patient before sunset. After treating the last patient, he writes a detailed report of symptoms and possible side effects. Rusty offers a weary-looking Rohan potion to boost your energy and relieve fatigue. She drinks it, is astonished as her vitality returns, quickly thanks him, and hurries out. Rusty reaches out to others, but they take time to warm up to him. After finishing his report, he goes to meet Colin. Along the way, grateful workers thank him for healing them. They said they expected nothing less from Colin's friend. At his old job, praise was rare, and Rusty rarely got credit for his work, but now he feels appreciated. Night falls over the campsite, and he hurries to Colin's tent. Once inside, he meets the captivating Colin, who asks why he's visiting so late, and he hands her the report he prepared. Colin reviews it, impressed by his efficiency, and her striking eyes show gratitude. Rusty downplays his role, but a loud stomach growl and jittery hands give him away. Rups made Colin laugh warmly and admitted it had been a long time since she laughed like that. Rust's charm is undeniable. The next day, Rohan and Eerie lead Rusty to the food storage to investigate. Before leaving, he calls Hippo to carry them. At the storehouse, Rusty holds his pendulum to measure the density of the magical elements just outside. Stronger magic makes the pendulum swing wider, and Rusty notes the readings on a scroll. Circling the storehouse, he notices the ground's strong magic concentration that prevents germs from surviving and keeps the area sterile. Some usually strong readings stand out, and he realizes Rohan might be assisting. It was a pleasant surprise given his usual aloofness. At last, Rusty was amused by the unexpected collaboration. The master alchemist notes that magical elements are highly concentrated everywhere. People usually store food in a half-basement because it stays cool and dark. Strong magical elements in remote areas eliminate germs, so people routinely use them to keep cooked food safe. Accepting that local germs in food cause illness is hard. Rusty wonders whether remnants of the monster that once nested in the storehouse are responsible. To confirm, he'll ask Rowan if this was a monster's nest and what kind it was. He grins, expecting Rowan's reaction to his probing question, and Rowan reveals the nest belonged to a bear. Russus grows curious about the creature. Their conversation is cut short when a man approaches, asks if he is Master Rusty, and thanks him for helping his younger brother. The man says his brother's limb numbness was debilitating, but Russ's treatment greatly improved it. His family is grateful, and he offers to help Rusty in any way to show their gratitude. Rusty smiles, thinking the brother was among those he treated yesterday. Rusty asks to inspect the food storehouse. The man leads him inside. Or Rusty inspects everything. He notices many different foods. We process everything here, from monster-derived meats to plant-based vegetables and cereals. Rusty says a storehouse full of monster ingredients sounds like the punchline to a bad joke. The food is well preserved with no sign of poison or monster residue. Rusty thanks the man and lets him lock up as he leaves. Harry asks whether they can rule out the storehouse as the source of the disease. Rusty cautions that they can't be completely certain yet and urges further investigation. Eerie, the older sister, asks where they are going next. Rusty points to the jug that purifies water for drinking and cooking, marking it as their next stop. They approach the jug that supplies the scarce water throughout Colin's domain. Rusty notes the jug's age, but confirms its purification function works and finds no faulty components. Rusty believes that if their mystery were as clear as the jug's water, the task would be simpler. Because the disease causes numbness, he suspects an ingested poison and examines both food and water. He knows the solution won't come easily. Rowan cuts in and asks if it's time for lunch. Briefly startled and off his game before he agrees, he finds the insistence on pausing for lunch odd. She realizes Colin probably asked his sisters to make sure he eats while they accompany him. Thinking back, Rusty remembers Colin force feeding him during intense research at the academy. The sisters lead him to the camp cafeteria and point out that food is prepared in a nearby tent. Before eating, he asks Sippo which meal he preferred. Rocking back and forth, he thinks even his pet has better eating habits than he does. Rusty knows how to prepare the hippo's favorite meal using finely ground magic stones and grass pellets, and understands that transmuted beasts need a balanced magic intake. The hippo eagerly devours this meal. The sisters bring Russ's meal, showcasing a main dish from hunted monsters, smoke for preservation. This meal comes with fried edible parts of local plant monsters and a serving of finely crushed dried grains. The menu is simple, but the cooks clearly try to improve the flavors a bit. Rusty asks whether everyone eats in the cafeteria, and Rohan says families usually eat at home, but most single people die in the cafeteria. The scene reminds Rusty of the academy cafeteria. They eat in silence, and he feels the sisters watching him through their masks. He asks whether they noticed anything in common among the patients or heard about any new cases today. Eerie suggests he paused work during meals. She has not heard of any new cases or noticed any commonalities among patients. Rusty mentions Eerie's comment that many patients are single. Eerie clarifies this isn't a LAR, but it's a solid observation. Rowan says she brought patients with her from the singles tent. Russ is intrigued and suspects the pattern shows single people eat in the cafeteria, and begins transcribing his thoughts, which leads Rusty to uncover something. He urgently tells the sisters to stop eating. He finds trace amounts of the monster's neurotoxin in the food that match the symptoms. Riley smiles and notes that even lunch breaks can lead to breakthroughs. While Rusty examines the food, Eerie warns everyone in the tent to stop eating. Possible poisoning cited. Rusty says many of the patients come from the singles tent and use the cafeteria, and since the water purification is fine, he's narrowing it down. The sisters look confused when the kitchen manager comes over to ask about the food problem. Rusty apologizes for summoning her so abruptly and introduces himself, saying he is investigating the disease on Lady Colin's orders, and asks to inspect the kitchen to test his theory. Inside, the readings confirm Russ's suspicions. He asks Rohan to pass a message to Colin and tells the kitchen manager to act immediately. Rusty tells her to visit Colin's tent in an hour for a full explanation, and she agrees. 1 hour later, the singles tent manager and kitchen manager join everyone in the Colin's tent. Colin asks Rusty whether he has contained the epidemic. Feeling heroic, Rust gives a small, proud smile. He explains that a lake upstream from the camp's river contains a monster whose neurotoxic poison is contaminating the water. The problem is not the purified drinking water, but the water used for washing dishes and doing laundry. Colin confirms they use this water for those tasks. Rusty reveals trace amounts of the poison in the singles' tent, tableware, and clothing. They enter the body through the skin and mouth, then build up and cause the disease. The discovery stuns everyone who feels embarrassed about missing it. Collins reassures them that the limited supply of purified water requires rationing, so no one should feel at fault. Colin acknowledges she allocated the water evenly and now plans to reassess its distribution across facilities and stop the upstream source that is causing the poison. Rusty reveals he already beat the monster while rescuing the white lizard, surprising everyone even more. Colin jokes and asks whether Rusty can see the future. After treating patients overnight, she found the source of the disease the next day and eliminated the monster. She finds his speed almost cheeky. Rusty explains that the source of the poison is gone. Confirm with Popo that no other monsters lurk in the pond, so the water will be safe soon. Rusty faces Colin and says his task is complete. His outstanding work won her admiration, and she expresses deep gratitude. Rusty warns that because the disease is caused by a tiny amount of toxin, more cases could occur. He pledged to treat anyone affected and asked Colin to send anyone feeling ill to him. Calls to agree and asks about upgrading the purification jug. Rusty consents will proceed if he gets adequate funding. Colin promises to provide whatever Rusty needs, and Rusty is pleased to have completed his first mission. Looking ahead, he is eager for life in the Borderland, but he remains cautious about problems at the Alchemist Association. Later, Ari introduces herself, as she does in Rohan. Head to Portman Street in the capital and find the large, rusty water jug that was requested. While they watched Russ, they shared impressions, and Harry sensed his immense combat strength from the start, noting he was unlike other alchemists. She believes they couldn't challenge him even together, and suspects this leaves Rohan with mixed feelings about Russ. Harry thinks about talking about their feelings, but senses that Rohan is holding hers back. They enter a store to buy the jug, then visit the Rusty Mansion magic item shop. As Ari walks through the city, the tense atmosphere contrasts with the calm of Portland Street, and he notices passersby with serious faces. This is probably because the area has many magic shops. Arriving at the Target store, a lively shopkeeper greets them warmly. The sisters look through the magic items until the shopkeeper offers to buy their goods. The shopkeeper, seeing they're not dressed like alchemists, asks who sent them. They show Russ's alchemist seal, and she agrees to buy their items. Although alchemy item prices rose, Rusty told them to use regular pricing. She respects him and praises his excellent potions. The sisters, impressed by her integrity, receive a generous sum, which Rusty approved for travel expenses. After leaving the store, Erie suggests getting a nice meal, so they head to a restaurant. They recall the start of their errands, how Colin sought healers before Russ, but everyone fled, afraid of the disease. Progress began only when Rusty arrived. The sisters showed him patience, and soon everyone left his tent better. He quickly treated the patients and eliminated the cause of the disease, demonstrating that he is exceptional. During the meal, Erie pauses and wonders whether to ask Rusty to treat their eye condition. Sisters exchange a subtle nod through their masks, their minds buzzing with possibilities. At the Alchemist Association's equipment vault, Realist complains about his chores and blames Rusty for abandoning his duties. He believes Rusty lacks loyalty and appreciation for the association. The association recently ran into many problems, forcing all master alchemists to leave their regular duties to deal with the chaos. Special vaults hold hazardous materials that need careful handling, because some monster components can explode if mishandled. An administrator used to run the vault, but budget cuts led to his dismissal. Realist remembers Rusty took over after joining the Basic Research Department, which has since been dissolved, leaving dangerous materials unattended. Emerging issues include an eruption of thick fluid from scavenger slime. Realist knows that access to the vault is limited to masters because it contains Class 1 hazardous materials, so they cannot delegate chores to subordinates. At that moment, an underling rushed in to report. There is trouble, and the Arms Association's vice president says they are summoning a realist. Realist tells his subordinate Tack to have the other masters cover the vault while he meets the vice president. Left alone, Tack tries to decide how to direct the masters. He shuts the vault door to contain the magical elements. Then he realizes he needs a master's medallion to lock it. He goes to the association's entrance and waits for someone to return. The vault door remains ajar, while Vice President Gorn scolds the realists for keeping him waiting. Realists say supplies of basic transmutation material are lagging. Gorn orders the equipment delivered to the army before the upcoming war and threatens penalties for any delays. Realist apologizes, but Gorn grows furious when he notices Realist's foul odor. Realist recognizes it's from the scavenger's line and tries to change it, but Gorn insists on a delivery timeline. Realist glances nervously at Salazar, who looks just as uneasy. Someone promises the order will be ready tomorrow. Gorn accepts it, but the realist panics because the task is daunting. Later at the Arms Alchemy Department lab, all the apprentice alchemists gather, even on their day off. Realist announces they must deliver magic circuits to the Arms Association. The army needs fire-based weapons, and the deadline is approaching. Realist questions the cause of the delays, and Salazar says they do not have enough high-quality distilled water for the circuitrying solutions. Realist is stunned that a small problem is causing so much chaos. Tao arrives with a device to test magical circuits and a board made from distilled water. Others attempt a transmutation while Tao inspects the board. It has enough magical elements, but fails to activate because its power is too low and its magic output is unstable. An alchemist notes that Russ's distilled water would improve the solutions. An infuriating realist who forbids mentioning Russ's name, revealing his intense jealousy. Realism announces he will make distilled water better than Rust to quickly complete the magic circuits. Irritation and competitive drive are clear as he tackles the challenge. His determination to showcase his skills remains steady. Hours later, Realism evaluates the quality of his distilled water, eager for results. Zabuza tells him it exceeds expectations, but carefully omits that it misses the safety threshold. Overlooking this raises the chance of product quality issues and could harm the association's reputation if they occur. Sabater agrees that Rust water was better, but keeps going. Be concise about realism's response and only say that the values meet standards. With realism satisfied, the alchemist is directed to proceed with the system. Near midnight, an intensifying explosion shakes the lab from behind. Tao in shock realize he left the vault door ajar, allowing the scavenger slime, overloaded with magical elements, to grow uncontrollably. The alchemist panics as the swelling slime wreaks havoc in the lab. They scramble for tools to fight back, including a wooden box that contains the magic circuit. The slime's massive size and power make it a formidable foe, and the alchemists use everything they have, struggling to contain the damage. Night turns into a frantic battle as they fight the spreading slime, their earlier confidence wiped away by the sudden crisis. The explosion hits before realism can set in, throwing him backward. The remaining alchemists set aside realism to focus on fixing the chaos and still finish their task. Salazar orders Skinny to deliver the magic circuits to the Arms Association at dawn. After realism, the slime-covered one departs. He lets her use the transmuted beast for transport. Meanwhile, Colin's morning starts early. She notices her messy bed hair but ignores it. Savoring a hearty breakfast of steak, she eats the same as her team and trains with them despite the scarce food at the border. Colin meets every challenge with a smile, but nightmares still haunt her sleep. Recalling how frustrated and helpless she felt when her subordinates fell ill, she is deeply grateful to those who saved them. Palin knows Rusty left the association after her call because he thought his former boss was incompetent. With him now under her care, she is committed to giving him freedom and rewards. One morning, noticing Rusty up early, she asks if he's heading out. He says he's gathering materials, and she urges him to stay safe while thanking him again for his help. Because he rescued her, she feels she will always owe him and vows to give him anything he needs. Colin advises Rusty to lean on others, warning that his lone wolf habits could harm his health and that he should not always go it alone. Impressed by her growth as a leader, Rust smiles and agrees to accept her support. Committed to working closely, they now have partnerships stronger than ever. After a successful hunt, Rusty heads back to camp on his trusty hippo and things look promising. Colin secured funding to address the water shortage. The hunters had collected the needed monster materials. All that remained was to get the jugs. The mangaka's fondness for the character shows, so the story runs smoothly, but a major plot twist may be coming. Rusty realizes he may need to hunt more monsters to meet the camp's growing needs, and is glad he prepared the necessary scrolls in advance. Rusty and Hippo soon return to camp, and the crowd cheers Rusty for coming back from the hunt. Amid the excitement, he spots Leitna and moves toward him. Rusty reveals he collected intriguing alchemy materials during the monster hunt, instantly catching Leitna's interest. A young alchemist in training eagerly asks to buy the materials at the monster butchering station. The camp turns to Rusty, waiting to see the monster he brought. Rust performs a flourished cast dispel to open a scroll, unveiling Formale Twin 9 Hun. Everyone was stunned that a lone hunter could take down such majestic beasts. Rusty shrugs off their awe and casually says he has more, revealing 1,000 rats, a hellish horse, and a mole bear. At the hall, Leitna's jaw drops. Rusty visits the Mii inspector, shows the monsters he hunted like everyone else in camp, and the inspector is amazed by his skill. Noting he had never seen 1,000 rats before, and that mole bears and hell horses are notoriously tough to hunt, he underscored Rust's remarkable prowess. Next, Rusty visits the Rose, not a woman named Rose he's smitten with, but an actual Rose. Thanking Rose for watching his things, he asks her to continue. Rosa, his loyal companion, has successfully brought many jugs to the camp. Rusty thanks Rosa and checks the jugs. Amazed to find the months paid, he asked if she had any trouble transporting them. Rosa dismisses it, noting that the capital's atmosphere is tense and some goods are getting more expensive. Rusty asks about Colin. Since he knows everything has been reported to him, he assumes everything is fine too. Rusty drops the small talk and gets down to business, asking Roger to step back while he reties his water purification magic. The process relies on more physics than a ninth grader's textbook. As an alchemist, Rusty grinds magic stones into dust. They mix them with perfectly pure water and channel magic energy to preserve its purity, ensuring the water obeys physical laws. He cast a magic potion to fix the magic circuit, leaving Roy stunned by his efficiency. Rusty moves from physics principles to chemistry principles, a transition that is quite complex. As he continues purifying the water, he works against gravity and checks his chemistry book. He tosses oddly shaped structures into the water, possibly magic visuals or actual chemical formulas, and integrates the magic solution into the jug's magic circuit. Eat a magic crystal to power the jug, or use formulas to permanently purify the water. Rust Everthorough explains the physics and chemistry needed to purify the water, then applies those techniques to the remaining jugs. Robert approaches the group, pleased they can now use as much water as they need. Rusty interrupts, explaining this is only the beginning of what applied chemistry and physics can do. Robert looks confused like the others. Rusty clarifies that at this stage the jugs are just for holding water and announces a plan to create a magical device that will eliminate the need to carry water to the camp. Rust says it will rain because of his first law of applied chemistry. Ro, puzzled but intrigued by the bold claim, asks if he can really make it happen. She says she wants to see the process, and Rusty invites her to the lake. Instruct Hippo to collect water. He prepares the magical device to draw water from a pot, a process too complex to describe in detail, much like chemistry itself. A hippo surfaces from the lake with a small fish in its mouth, indicating there are no major threats or monsters lurking below. Rusty sets up the device and Ro asks if it uses a magic stone from a certain monster. Rusty confirms that he checked the water and found no paralyzing cloud. This is a byproduct of an extremely dangerous monster immune to physical attacks. Ro still doesn't know the full extent of Rust's abilities. When Rusty activates the gadget, Ro asks what it's called. Rusty casually suggests calling it the Cloud Water Distribution Device as it starts turning water into clouds. He points out that the paralyzing cloud looks like a cloud monster, but its core is the magic stone. Robert watches in awe as clouds drift toward the jugs, guided by a magic circle Rusty put inside them to channel the water. Rusty explains simply that clouds are unaffected by physical contact and behave like a gas, formless and without a fixed volume. Jokingly referencing E equals mc squared, Russ knows pipes won't work at the camp because of monster attacks, so he plans a clever, remarkable blend of magic and applied chemistry. Rust, Ro, and the hippo return to the camp, with Rusty and Ro riding on the creature's back. Rusty smiles as the water fills the jugs as planned. Eerie suddenly calls out that Lady Colin needs him. Thinking something might be wrong, Rusty hurries to meet Colin, who submits 2 written communications on parchment, one open and one sealed. Praising his efficiency, she says a typical alchemist would need days to set up the water jug system and complete the purification, but Rusty did it almost instantly. Rusty dismisses the compliment and examines the parchments, which appear to be from Toma's village. He asked Colin while she consulted the feudal lord before trading magic crystals. Collins notes the situation looks favorable, but his expression turns grave, stating the circumstances are far more important than simply making promises. Frankly, this is remarkable. Colin gently takes Rusty by the collar and asks what deception he used. Rusty objects, telling Colin that she's tearing his shirt. Colin steps back quickly, aware of her great strength. A grip on his collar would let her shake Rusty effortlessly. Pausing briefly, Rusty assured Colin there had been no deceit. The enterprise is built around traditional magic crystals. Colin's interest spikes, asking if these are H32-sized crystals. Caught off guard, she asks if Rusty can really handle it, and moments later admits he can. Switching to business, Colin asks Rusty if he understands that digging into the capital's interests is like challenging its power holders. Rusty nods to show he understands, and gives Colin a slight, irritated wink. Colin wonders whether Rusty expects her to handle the coming conflicts. Picture them as a pair, Rusty doing the dishes and Colin juggling multiple jobs. Rusty says he asked Harold about it, and the answers are written on the parchment. Colin pauses, remembering Harold wasn't working from the parchment. Trouble is clearly brewing in the capital, and she has heard the same concerns from Eerie and Ro. It was more severe than she had expected. Rusty and Colin are clearly plotting something. The Locas seem like old friends quietly conspiring during an adult math class. They're on the same page, spotting a clear opportunity and talking about when to make their move. Colin asks Rusty to investigate and tells him he'll have a heavy workload. Rusty offered her arm respectfully and accepted the challenge. He says the situation feels like a throwback to earlier times. A soft breeze moves through the camp. Today, Rusty launches his magic crystal venture in the neighboring dominion and waits at the camp entrance with Rowan and Ro. Soft, pleasant sunlight makes the wait enjoyable. Rowan suddenly calls out that she sees the approaching group. Note that one figure looks formidable. Rusty sees he has handed the whole negotiation to others and doesn't know the details. Contract and tedious deal tasks are handled externally, fraying Rusty to let him focus on turning kokoro fruits into magic crystals for substantial profit gives him a lot of flexibility. There is no set minimum or maximum crystal output, so decisions can be based on convenience. Before any major changes to production levels, he still plans to consult Colin. Rusty is amazed they secured such favorable terms. He surveys the area and notes it is a remote region without proper roads. Mules are more practical than wheeled transport here. Road improvements should be a priority going forward, he believes. Colin, the boss, makes those choices, so Rusty doesn't worry much. Scanning the caravan, he spots several wounded people and concludes they were likely attacked. Spotting Azala in the group, he goes over to greet him. Once mentored by Rust, Zala greets Rusty warmly and has a brief, encouraging conversation with him. Rusty spots injured travelers in the caravan and offers to heal them. No one is critically hurt, so Rusty pulls out a potion to help the injured. Rowan calls to Rust amid the activity. Rusty is surprised to find Tala in the caravan. He remembers her as the Nike who was rescued while she was heading to meet Calendar. Tal says she was on her way to speak with Rusty and joined the caravan when she learned they were going the same way. Zala points out that Tala saved the caravan from a monster several times. Rusty greets Tala at the Borderland with open arms and a warm welcome. Sensing she might be stressed after polite exchanges, he offers her a cup of tea to help her relax. He suspects Tala wants to speak in private, away from others. Rusty invites her to his tent for tea. Tala accepts without hesitation. Meanwhile, Zala asks Rusty to take the Kedger fruits to the square, a task Rowan calls simple. Rusty shows Tala around inside the tent, and Tala is astonished to see all the furniture made of ice. Then Rusty invites her to sit and calls her Miss Tala. Tala quickly asks him to skip the formalities, reminds him he saved her life, and insists he call her Tala. Rusty says she can just call him Rusty too, and it seems they are in the early stages of a connection that could grow over time, so Rusty might find a partner in Tala. Rusty offers Tala a warm cup of tea, and Tala remarks on its rich aroma. Tala breaks the awkward pause and says she wants to talk about the shaman with Rust. Rusty asks if she means the person who sent a familiar after her. Tala confirms and says that after Rusty left, she followed his trail to the capital. They sought to learn the shame and destroy her church, and that was when she was cursed, allowing the shame and the tracker to take hold. Once Rusty lifted the curse, Tala found the shaman's hideout without being detected. He got away. Tala still found several intriguing chips there. She hands one to Russ. To be safe and in case the chip is cursed, Rusty puts on gloves infused with the effect of purification scrolls before inspecting the chip. He asks Tala whether she showed it to the Alchemist Association in the capital. Tala says she didn't do it because it felt risky, so she avoided drawing attention. She says the church was fragile, with walls riddled with holes of different sizes and a foul smell filling the air. Rust makes the workers' faces look lifeless, like the walking dead. He suspects a slime or some other creature is causing the problems. Someone must be handling it. Rusty praises tallest option for keeping the chip secret. He says the chip is a magical circuit board that converts magic elements into flame, a defining feature of the Alchemist Association's transmutation. He also says the hideout held many magic guns, suggesting a connection between the association and the shaman. Rusty says the situation is deeply concerning. Magic guns work very well against other life forms. It is useless against humans. Altering the magic element causes conversion loss. If the guns are intended only for monsters, there is no need to change the elements. The conversion appears designed for use against humans, revealing its true intent. Tola sees the disturbing implications of this discovery. Rusty notes there's another problem. The gun is likely to misfire. It may harm people nearby, which appears unintended and shows a flaw. Rusty is disappointed that his former workplace produced such shoddy work because of careless management. Tola says coming to Rusty was the right choice and thanks him for the crucial insights he shared. Rusty suggests Toma to Lady Colin, eager to introduce them. Grateful for the lovely tea, Tala gets ready to join Rust. Work keeps him busy, so he cannot join her for dinner. With Zala and the others leaving tomorrow, Rusty must focus on turning Kegra fruits into magic crystals. He started his work at the dinner table, while Tala meets Lady Colin, sat among an array of mouth-watering dishes. Tala spots women seated to Collins's left and right, who are likely his loyal companions. Warm-hearted Colin greets Tala and welcomes her to the Dominion. Rowan remembers the strange twists of fate that brought Tala to the caravan so she could protect it on its journey. Seeing Tala hungry after her travels, Colin says they've prepared a small meal, though it's anything but modest. Tala offers thanks to her deity and digs into the lavish spread that delights the senses, feeling as if she stepped into another realm. The meat's flavor floods Tala's palate, herbs and juices perfectly balanced into an extraordinary culinary delight. Tala suspects the meat may come from a monster, unlike anything she's tasted before. Because monster meat has magical elements, she thinks this rare dish probably comes from a high-ranking creature. Tala gathers her nerve and asks Lady Colin whether the savory meat thrilling her taste buds comes from a twin lion horn. Lady Colin smiles, impressed by Tala's sharp guess, which was right on the first try. Colin praises Thala's gourmet instincts and confirms the meat is indeed from a twin lion horn, a steak cut from an adult female. Of the 9 horned creatures, adult females are prized for meat rich in elemental magic that flows through their bodies. Harry says proudly that Rusty hunted the beast, showing his skill as an alchemist. After enjoying the steak, Tala served a crisp glass of cold ale that matched the steak's first succulent bite. The first sip of this drink carries her to another plane. She calls the ale marvelous and is impressed by its smooth finish. Tala never expected to find such a refined cold ale in a remote area. Smiling, she says she should have expected this level of quality from Colin's domain. Colin proudly says the exceptional quality of their food and drink comes from a unique magic item, Rusty, created that elevates every dish served. During the conversation, Colin feels a small pang of envy as he senses a bond between Tala and Rust. She asks here about Tala's earlier meeting with Rust. Tala speaks confidently about her quest to avenge the comrades the shaman harmed. She says she found an alchemy clue and took it to Rusty for expert analysis. Colin nods, recognized Rust's skill as an alchemist. The warm mood, lightened by the cold ale, encourages Tala to share her past and her promise to honor her fallen allies. Beneath the bright moonlight, Tala's heart glows as she remembers. 2 years ago at the Turnip Guild's Erased Church, young Sheila excitedly showed Lady Knight Tala, a doll wearing a newly sewn outfit. Sheila had made it herself and wanted to share her accomplishment with Tala, who had given her the doll. Tola praised Sheila's sewing, delighting the gear she used. Someone asked if Tala was going into town. She was indeed planning a routine shopping trip. Sheila asked for a cute ribbon for her doll. Before leaving, Holly's friend Portia arrived, asking for Albert's liver and promising Al when she returns. A church in the forest outside town needed regular supply runs. That day, Tala handled the errands. With a long list, she aimed to start early. Parish Chief Silly, a Manning, approached Tala. Be aware of shopping plans. Noticing they were low on medicinal herbs, she said it was a good time to restock and gave a silly smile. Advised Talon to avoid overtraining because being injured alone would be risky. Like a mother, Tala's Celia was admired for her kindness and sharp insight and missed nothing. After Celia blessed Holly's safety, Holly set off on her day's journey. In the present, Tala asks Colin about Eresley's 3 faces, and Colin answers correctly with love, wisdom, and vengeance, which pleases Tala. Tola reflects on how training in love and vengeance prolonged her studies. By the time she returned from shopping, night had fallen. While she was away, the shaman tragically attacked the church. After winning a ribbon and gathering rare ingredients, Tala felt late. Tala hoped Celia wouldn't be too upset. Nearing the church, she saw a bright light over the hill and found it engulfed in flames. Amid the fire, she found Sheila's lifeless body and wept over the agonizing death caused by the duel. The auditorium where the fire likely started was lit from outside. Flames flicker through shattered windows. Shocked, Tala reached for her sword and froze, unable to move. Guilt still weighs on her for not acting. When the fire died at sunrise, Tala recognized Silly by her body first. Despite severe burns, Silly's kind smile endured even in death. When Tala tried to hold her, a shaman's curse activated and set Tala raging. The shaman had defiled Celia, using her status as a beloved to curse anyone who approached. Tala could never shake the shame of her failure. Cursed bruises on her face marked the dishonor she felt toward Celia. She thought everyone should live longer than she would. Start with a gentle approach to comfort her and apologize for bringing up those painful memories. Tala, the Lady Knight, admits she owes Rusty for breaking the curse. Once her vengeance is complete, she will offer him her sword, and Colin understands her resolve. Welcoming Talha into her dominion, Colin tells her she is always welcome, prompting Tala to call her by her first name. Meanwhile, after hours of transmuting, the master alchemist becomes thirsty. Arya brings food and drink, urging him to pause. After reaching his goal, Rusty happily takes a break and eats while standing. Eerie, his loyal friend, brings chairs for comfort. Rusty apologizes to Eerie for the trouble while he sips ale that soothes his throat. Eerie says Leitna brewed the ale for the welcome feast. Leitna took great pride in perfecting the drink through relentless experimentation since he began riding. Rusty finds the ale exceptional, its unique aroma suggesting the use of plant-type monster ingredients. He discovers Leitna not only manages food storage, but also makes remarkable drinks. Eric remembers Leitna's joy when a barley monster entered their dominion and he hunted it down. Rusty looks at the twin-horn steak. They've had it before, but this is the first time it's served as a thick cut. He praises the camp cooks for turning familiar ingredients into bright, interesting dishes, and their variety and preparation keep meals exciting. Eerie says meals are a highlight of their remote setting. She changes the subject and asks whether Rusty has noticed the special abilities she and her sister have. Rusty confirms he already suspected that when they ambushed an outside camp. He assumes Rohan can see great distances or through objects. Ari's NAC for measuring strength points to a related power. Eerie confirms he is mostly correct. Rowan has a broad, penetrating vision, while Eric can briefly glimpse the future. Rusty is amazed by their abilities. Magic eyes are rare. The future sight feels mythical. Eerie downplays her gift. It activates only during potential conflicts, providing a few seconds of foresight. Rusty asks whether she recognizes his fighting style. He notices her cloth-covered face and imagines her smiling knowingly, and tells her not to respond, instead of asking if she's comfortable revealing so much about her powers. Harry explains that her trust comes from his past actions and the help he gave, which is why she is confiding in him. Pointing to her face cloth, she says this is what she wants to talk about. Rusty guesses it's a magic item acting as a seal, a keen intuition. Rusting requires asking if she needs the cloth repaired. Eerie explains these magic items were created to keep their powers from spiraling out of control, but they're losing effectiveness. Rusty realizes their powers are still growing. Instead of repairing the cloth, he suggests making 2 new magic items and notes it will probably take some time. Grateful, Eerie thanked the alchemist for the generosity and promised to return the favor. Refusing any repayment, he treated everyone as kin. After praising her cooking, he went back to his tasks and told her he would check the sisters' clothes tomorrow. Leaving, he kept thinking about returning to the magic crystals. The next morning, Zala was thrilled when the alchemist told her he had transformed all the crystals overnight. Ross wondered if Salt could carry them all back. The astonishing feat left no doubt, so he began directing the loading of the mules. Praising the alchemist, he recognized his exceptional skill. Ross then went to fetch the key figure who was with them. Zala soon returned with a mammal, a civil official from the Dalton Dominion who had come to oversee the deal. Nemmels was stunned to see the pile of Kager fruits turned into magic crystals overnight. He met with Colin to negotiate the payment. Rusty knew the village chief had likely prepared his feudal lord for the transaction. He suspected the alchemist would finish the task in one night. Rusty realized Mammal's quill pen was a magical tool that used enchanted elements to protect key documents from tampering or forgery. The stamp used by the Mammals was also a magical item. Rusty noticed that the figure on the parchment was more than double last year's budget for the basic research department. The Mammals handed the payment check to Colin, and he accepted it. The official requested payment of the rust portion per the agreement. Colin stood and announced the Dominion's alchemy research department, which she would oversee directly, and named Rusty its head, surprising the alchemist. Although he accepted it, he still responded to his decisions. Colin said the new department would be funded for now from magic crystal sales profits after deducting Russell's share. The master alchemist grinned, knowing that launching a new department was no small task, and pictured the paperwork the Mammals would face, which would almost pit the official against them. Colin told the Mammals they would deliver the crystals to their destinations, including his domain as agreed. Mammals were pleased and promised to handle the logistics smoothly, eager to use strategic resources effectively. Rusty noted that colonics seldom plotted, and he found it easier to let the two officials handle the details. Before leaving, he went over to Rusty to congratulate him on his new role. She wanted to see how he would do after he decided to pursue the shaman with the information he had provided. The Lady Knight said goodbye, wished him success, and left. Watching her leave, Rusty silently hoped she would succeed in her quest for vengeance, then turned back to Colin. Lady Rose said his responsibilities wouldn't change much. He would continue using alchemy on campus shoes, transmuting magic crystals, and doing basic research. Prioritizing the research side of his role was necessary. Colin emphasized that he could use his budget freely, as long as he accounted for all expenses within reason. She pictured the department as an independent unit with more staff. Someone asked him to propose a name for it. Rusty starts thinking of a name for the new department, seeking something unique from the Alchemist Association. Names tied to the Admiral Dominion or to his alchemical work come to mind. Not ready to decide, he returns to his tasks. Two sisters call from outside his tent to announce their arrival. The sister steps inside, and Rusty explains he wants to check on them after Ari's earlier comments. He remembers Rowan often looking around his tent during her last visit, probably studying the rose with her magic eye. He finds it an intriguing ability. Rusty instructs the rose to form 2 chairs for them. He steps closer to study how magic flows in the sisters' eyes and how the magic cloth restrains their powers. First, he asks them to wrap a sealing scroll over their eyes to fully block their magical sight. During this, he will do a basic inspection of their magic clothes. Nervous Eerie asks who should go first, and Rusty is not surprised. Because their anxiety comes from the risk of removing a magic item, they always wear one on their faces. The alchemist suggests beginning with a row hit. The more Aries' magic eye pushes herself, the more strain it puts on her body. He hands Eerie the scroll and shows how to wrap it around Rohit's head so it covers her eyes. Rusty secures and seals the scroll, plunging Rohit's vision into complete darkness. Convinced the scroll is working, he asks Eerie to remove her sister's magic item. Eerie follows orders, and Rusty tells the rose to fetch the magic element tester, a device that emits faint magical traces to test magic items. Confirm the magic stone is intact. Places the cloth on the table to inspect its magical supply, which is centered on Roquet's brow. Rusty uses a pendulum to measure the flow of magic when she wears it. The researcher finds the magic cloth structure straightforward and identifies a buffer and an amplifier on the cloth, finding them somewhat unnecessary. This item can be significantly improved, so he suspects the alchemist who made it was likely mediocre. Rusty could combine several of his magic circuits to make a much better item right away. Unsure whether the original alchemist was close to the sisters, he hesitates about how much to reveal. Relieved, he glances at the sisters and sees that Rowan has relaxed. He gives the magic item back to Eerie and tells her to put it back on Rohit's face. Rusty reaches to undo the seal and takes Rohit's hand. Enable a sharing protocol to improve the item's performance. After finishing, he asks Rohan to keep the scroll for later use. Unsure if he had made any mistakes, he relaxes when Rohit's reassuring words confirm the experiment's success. After examining the sisters, the alchemist considers crafting 2 new magic items for them. Knowing they would outperform the current items, he hesitates to hand them over. He knows that providing new items would require replacing the old ones. Special abilities are rare and still poorly understood, and he fears the psychological effects could impair their control. When the goal is simply to support their powers, the old items may be better. The choice is complicated, so he considers designing a device to measure and compare their control of magic. Rusty feels his recent research has stalled, mainly because of tedious tasks and a tight budget at his former workplace. With the new budget, Rusty is considering a new approach instead of just improving performance. He's considering designing items that can be turned fully on or off. It includes brief periods of automatic control. He's wondering if inverting the formula and applying it elsewhere could work. This could produce the desired outcome. Later, he finds Rohit waiting and tells her he has crafted 2 new magic items for her. He shows 2 pairs of glasses. At first, the sisters are confused about how to use them. He shows how to put on the glasses and asks them to take off their clothes. The sisters light up when they see each other's faces clearly and feel renewed by the glasses. Rusty compliments them and says the glasses look great on both. Eerie is a bit shy at first when getting used to the new item. Rusty keeps explaining how they work, starting with the Rodex glasses, which seem to be adjusting well. Sliding them up her nose switches them to power sealing mode, he explains. Rowing tests the glasses' performance until she is completely satisfied. Rusty leads them to the armored summit. where sounds have been swimming upstream in large numbers since Apollo defeated the pond's boss. Rowan strikes a salmon with a single precise blow, a skill even Colin can't match. Have her rest if she has any issues with the item. Rowan seems completely happy with her glasses. At last she can control her magic eyes and see the world in vivid detail. Rowan says switching between transparency mode and long-distance sight mode is seamless with the new glasses. She notes one drawback. Although voice activation was useful, she preferred touch control. Using her left hand for control would also be more practical, she suggests. While she wields her spear with her right hand, Rusty accepts her feedback and immediately takes the glasses to adjust them. Rewriting the magic circuit, he shifts all controls to the left. He gives the enhanced glasses back to Rohit, who puts them on with delight and starts dancing happily around the pond. Ari and Rusty smile as they watch her, until an armored salmon lands perfectly on her spear. The elder sister clearly used her magic eye to see the salmon's leap and struck it down. Rusty wonders if her magic works outside combat or if she saw a future where he accidentally revealed his thoughts. Harry tells him he's not completely wrong. Meanwhile, Realism seems furious as the association's president orders him to fetch Russell. All departments are experiencing problems with the quality of basic materials. These issues have caused transmutation failures and delays, and buyers are demanding compensation for missed deadlines and subpar materials. The president reminds Realism of his earlier claim that Russell's departure wouldn't matter, and now faces questions about how he'll explain the current crisis. The president blames Realism for damaging the association's reputation and not filling the gap Russell left. Their buildings have big holes from the explosion, and the stench lingers. Even with these problems, Realism still opposes bringing Rusty back. They believe sales hit record highs without him and are pinning their hopes on the recent magic crystal shipment. The president interrupts and assigns Realism to cover Russell's absence, threatening to force him to fetch Russell personally if he fails. Reluctantly, Realism agrees and blames Rusty for the chaos, as he had. Back at the Army's alchemy department, the other alchemists can clearly see his foul mood. Next, Salazar enters with grim news for review. It seems most of the recently shipped new-style magic crystals have been returned. Realism's anger grows as he inspects the returned shipment. Demanding payment details, he tells Todd to contact the wholesalers. Todd steps in and asks what to do with the returned crystals, which provide a vital source of income. Realism orders Todd to go to storage, clear out everything to make room, and place the return shipment there while he investigates its intended destination. Reluctant, the alchemists hesitate to discard old-looking items, but they have no choice. They head to the storage rooms and start organizing to clear space. Skinny spots old wooden boxes and assumes they contain obsolete equipment from the former basic research department, deeming them unimportant. In one box, she finds a clear, colorless liquid and dismisses it as a worthless potion. Tortora proposes dumping everything in the river without any realistic checks, hoping to avoid further angering their superior. The alchemists begin the work, and Skinny borrows a transmuted beast to haul the wooden boxes to the river. These boxes contain concentrated magical element solutions that Rusty often used in his early research. Magic elements are harmless to humans, so dumping them in the river will not cause immediate harm. Because there is no visible harm, no one will notice what Tal and the others have done until it's too late. The effects may not appear right away, and the long-term consequences are uncertain. Russell's actions have apparently enraged the corrupt, overweight master, someone who looks a lot like the irrational math teacher you remember from school. Chaos reigns in the communications room at the Alchemist Association. Salazar holds a paper and looks confused as he reads it. Master Realism bursts in, startling the employee before he can reply, then strides over and grabs the paper from his hands. A deep furrow in his brow shows his complete confusion. Many old magic crystals are scattered around. Realism sounds the alarm, unable to believe it. Imports are completely stopped because of these old-style magic crystals, and Realism suspects an association number may be smuggling them in, though that seems unlikely. Any alchemist who betrayed the association would be expelled immediately. An unlicensed alchemist wouldn't have the skill to pull off that scheme. Soon Realism puts the pieces together and remembers Russell leaving the association. He suspects Rusty could be behind it. Regardless, clients are returning the new-style magic crystals, and at this rate the association risks accumulating unsellable stock. Realism asks the other alchemist about sales and learns they have recovered a little. The association's outlook remains grim, and realism is now furious. Realism is convinced Rusty is behind everything. If so, realism may have to swallow its pride and beg Rusty to return. Its ego is too large to accept that. From the doorway, a woman calls out, telling realism that the chief is summoning him and seems furious. Realism keeps haunting Rusty for a little longer, but for heading into the forest with some suspicious-looking people while navigating the thick terrain. Sunlight glints off Realism's bald head, shining like a forlorn moon, and his tear-filled eyes shimmer with frustration while he seems powerless to change things now, though a chance still remains. The chief summoned Realism and ordered him to bring Rusty back to the association, a task the stubborn old man hated but could not refuse because he had to follow the chief's direct orders. Realism paid out of pocket to hire rough-looking delinquents to join him on a trek through the forest to retrieve Russell, and his judgment seems questionable since the men look weak and incompetent, much like him, but it's still better than going alone. A lone delinquent questions the route, but Realism keeps creeping in. They insist they're on the right path. It turns out that instead of retrieving Russell, they plan to murder the unsuspecting alchemist, which will be their undoing. Russell, the story's hero, refuses to be defeated. The group carries magic circuits from the association that are meant to alter elements. They intend to use them as weapons against Russell. Realism says Rusty should be burned completely. His cruel wishes are doomed to fail. He hatched a plan and ordered his men to lure Rusty into a trap where monsters would devour him. A vile plan takes shape as twisted realism feeds the group's greed, and they assume Russell, likely the source of the magic crystals, must be wealthy, so they eagerly plan how to split the spoils if the scheme succeeds. Arrogantly confident, the group believes it can eliminate Russell. Realism mocks Rusty as a fool for venturing into a beast-infested remote area and says his death will be his own fault. His logic is as intricate as complex chemistry. Realism also disrespects the chief, who prefers clean operations. Shouting to the group, he warns that many local monsters are sensitive to sound. We plan to use this on thousands of creatures on Russell. In a twist, Realism's loud shouting draws a sound-sensitive beast that charges from behind. It turns out to be a small, worm-like creature that the group easily defeats. The thousands of monsters now approaching pose a serious threat. Realism orders are meant to use the magic circuits because altering elements has drained too many magic resources. The stubborn hired men ignore the sensible advice he gave Annette to hit their targets, and soon they exhaust their magic crystals. They beg him for spare crystals and a weapon, but he has none. Cowardly men run away, leaving Realism to face the threat alone. The betrayal stings. As an association number, he has decent skills and attacks the monster alone, casting spells and smashing the worm-like creatures. Reality holds against the relentless swarm monsters. Oddly, his transmuted pike, his sole attack method, harbors parasitic hyphat lodged in his body, a critical flaw in his alchemy. Because of that inefficiency, he dreads combat. Left with no other option, he must fight to survive. Real relentlessly takes down the monsters one by one. He hurls spores that drain life from ferocious creatures, sprout living mushrooms from their remains, and quickly tear their flesh apart, killing them. Amid a vast pile of dead monsters he has slain, Realism confronts the grim reality that more are still coming. Still, he fights on despite the endless onslaught. With no choice but to fight or die, he moves through piles of monster corpses. One creature sneaks up and bites him hard. Pain so intense it brings memories of his ancestors fighting a villain. His exhausted face shows deep lines of rage. Still badly wounded in the face, he manages to kill the worm that attacked him. Kneeling with one leg braced, he checks his wound. He wonders if a potion could heal it. The land around him, littered with monsters he killed with alchemy and sprouting mushrooms, looks ghastly. After recovering from the skirmish, Realism gets up and presses toward Russell, shouting that Rusty is to blame for his recent suffering. He vows revenge and plans to lure Rusty back to the association, then ambush and destroy him when he is at his happiest. His villainous scheme is doomed to fail as the story unfolds. Realism, weighed down by his heavy frame, trudges across the vast terrain determined to find Rusty. Rusty shares a quiet moment with his loyal companion Hippo while they perform an important alchemical task. Removing magical elements from soil for cultivation. Soil with too many magic elements stops crops from growing and can even turn planted crops into monsters, so alchemists must extract those elements and release them into the air. Rusty digs hand-sized holes in the cracked, powdery earth. The ground is hard to dig, but Rusty finishes the job. Hippo, his faithful steed, watches with curiosity. Rusty suggests they take turns digging, and Hippo eagerly agrees. He steps back and lets Hippo dig, Impressed by Hippo's skill, Rusty points him to mark spots. They finish digging quickly. Rusty moves to the next step, carrying transmuted bolts to extract magical elements. Hippo offers to help, but Russell, seeing the task as too complex for his dog, handles it himself. Making sure there are no leaks, he begins the incantation. Then he activates the magic element diversion. The bolts begin to work, drawing magic from the soil. Rusty is careful not to pull more magic than he can handle, as it might backfire and hurt him. He glances at the charm on his left wrist and remembers when it was given to him. Ari gave the charm from their hometown to thank Rusty for the magical item he had given her. Rusty asks if she knows about the charm and Ari blushes, and she explains that the charm can be cut. He is delighted to learn it came from Rohan, but puzzled why being cut makes it special. Back in the present, Rusty pauses to rest, leaning against the hippo. The incantations will take a while, so he decides to read a precursor's paper to pass the time. He pulls out a study that compares levels of magic elements in the soil and in the wheat grown in it. He recalls that before he led the Alchemist Association, he copied every paper from the basic research department onto a scroll, sure that realism and others would discard them. Rusty dives into the precursor's paper, absorbed by its findings. It suggests leaving some magic elements in the soil improves taste for humans. Some think the brain mistakes ingested magic elements for enhanced flavor, even though the actual taste stays the same. Russell's research examines the effects of magical elements on the human body, and this paper provides useful insights. The paper presents fascinating points about his work, while Rusty ponders. Hippo alerts him, and he notices the task is nearly done. Rusty stands, checks the concentration, and confirms it's perfect, praising Hippo for monitoring the soil and alerting him promptly. Before he can go any further, Harry rushes up from a distance to warn him that someone has come to see him, and it could cause trouble. Rusty wonders if the visitor is Trouble and asks Eerie whether the visitor gave a name. Sweating, Eerie confirms the visitor is real. Realism's downfall looks ready to unfold. Rusty wonders why Realism has come to see him. Remembering his academy days brings unease, but he decides to return to the community to face the unexpected visitor, and on the way asks Eerie for more details. Rusty Nance Hippo reaches out to Eerie, who hesitates, shy and unsure at first, then grabs his hand and climbs aboard as he tells her to hold on tight because he plans to speed up to return quickly. The ride feels thrilling and surprisingly comfortable to Eerie, likely because she sits behind a passionate, promising young man like Russell, and despite the rough wasteland terrain she suspects Hippo slows its pace to keep them safe. Maybe the rusty Equit Tipo has expensive Fox shock springs on its forelegs. Rusty says Realism was a former colleague at the Alchemist Association, notorious for causing trouble, and he pictures Realism's expression as white. Putting the pieces together, he suspects the visit from Realism is linked to the magic crystal problems. A chill runs through him as he braces for the coming confrontation. Noticing Ares' discomfort, Rusty asks quietly if something is wrong. At first, the kind woman admits she can't see the future clearly. A twisted battle is looming, and she senses it will be a true war. Eerie says her vision flickers on and off, making her more afraid, and Rusty asks how the monocle he gave her is working. Eagerly, Eerie says the magic item Rusty crafted for her works flawlessly. The remarkable monocle now lets her detect signs of the approaching battle and better grasp the challenges ahead. Rusty is amazed that Eerie answered his question before he could finish asking it. Assume the monocle is working perfectly. He then asks if, as she implies, he and Realism will clash in the future. Harry confirms that this seems almost certain. She says it's more than just the fight, and her instincts tell her something deeper is brewing, yet she can't explain it because it's unlike anything she's felt before. Ari feels shy and steps back from the conversation. Rusty shrugs off her pulling back. Thank her for sharing her insights. Hippo trudges through the rugged terrain. Harry becomes more anxious, her mind heavy with the sense that a pivotal moment tied to Russell's choices is near. This turning point, where the best and worst outcomes carry equal weight, is close, and she knows it. Eerie pictures fate unraveling as she sees two men facing each other in a barren wasteland marked by a shaman's presence. Seeing Ari in distress, Rusty looks back as her eyes glow with magical light, revealing her heightened perception. The monocle runs at full power, aligned with her magical sight. The vision of the future exceeds Russell's expectations and fills him with awe at her power. Lost in troubling thoughts and feeling lightheaded, they almost slip. Rusty quickly steadies her and urges her to hold on. Relieved, Eerie thanks him and says she's okay. Rusty notes her future sight has stopped. You realize the strain on her magical eye is worse than you thought. Rusty vows to protect everyone, no matter what fate brings, and calls the eerie family. We keep their bond vague, not strictly sibling-like and possibly deeper, and for family-friendly storytelling, we leave it to the imagination. Rusty smiles and tells Eerie to hold tight while he gets ready to speed up. Hippo, his faithful steed, charges forward on 4 powerful legs and reaches the camp quickly. Eerie leads Rusty to Realism's location, her senses sharp. She mourns within an evil aura radiating from Realism, and have Rusty wonder whether this ties to her transparency power. Approaching, he spots Lady Colin nearby. After politely apologizing to Colin for the delay, he turns to face the hostile, almost bestial reality. A master alchemist like Realism is a formidable foe, especially for Colin, who excels at physical combat rather than alchemy. Seeing that facing Realism alone could overwhelm her, Rusty steels himself, rallies everyone, and takes charge as he approaches Realism. Dramatically pinching his nose, he jokes that something smells, mocking the presence of Realism. Reluctantly, the master alchemist retorts with equal disdain, then grits his teeth and braces for the showdown. Driven by his schemes, Realism announces that the Alchemist Association is restarting the basic research department. The president has offered Rusty a chance to return. Realism reaches out his hands, faking friendship, as he asks Rusty if he is happy about the chance to rejoin the Alchemist Association. His insincere tone gives him away. Rusty senses the hidden hostility. He briefly acknowledges the offer. He makes clear he left the association by choice, a decision made with full awareness. Acknowledging that the closure of the basic research department influenced his exit, he now finds purpose and opportunity beyond the association. Rusty bluntly tells Realism he can leave if that's all he came for. Realism's fake composer falters. He lets out a raw, animalistic howl, not tears but a primal outburst of anger and frustration. The eerie sound puts Russell, Colin, Eerie, and Rohan on edge, and they assume defensive positions. Prepare for Realism's next move. As his schemes fall apart, his demeanor changes completely. He says there is no choice left and he begins to activate his alchemy, eyes gleaming with menace as he vows to kill everyone present. Tension mounts as Rusty and his allies prepare for the coming battle, knowing they must unite against a formidable foe, and he tries to be realistic, warning that fighting to the death is illegal for alchemists and could cost him his qualifications. Unfazed, Realism smirks, confident in his skills, and arrogantly claims he can defeat Russell, the story's hero, and end the tale right there. That is a bold claim. Rusty spots Realism, releasing spores from his mouth, and yells for everyone to retreat. Warning, inhaling the slime mold-like transmuted beasts can be lethal. Soon the spores sprout limbs, seeming harmless but likely laced with Realism's poisonous elements. Rusty decides he has to neutralize them all at once. He pulls out a small white wand, the magic tool Eerie recognizes from his work making magic crystals. Rusty unleashes a full-power tornado attack on Realism's spores, and someone should tell Realism he's just a side character. He is not the villain of this story, as the clash between him and Rusty escalates, and Russell's tornado sweeps away Realism's dangerous mushrooms. Rusty, unsure of the transmuted beast's nature, carefully cuts them into small pieces to avoid surprises. Colin, Eerie, and Rohan share confident smiles, their trust in Russell's expert alchemy unshaken. Ever cautious, Rusty moves the mushrooms away from the camp to keep civilians safe, a sharp contrast to Realism, a corrupt alchemist working for a broken system. His carelessness lays bare the harsh truths of many worlds. Realism watches in shock, face blank, as Russell's tornado reduces his mushrooms to dust. The ground-up mushrooms swirl in the tornado's core, forming a grotesque, smoothie-like mess. The revolting sight meets his steady, realistic gaze, sorrow filling his eyes as his cherished creations turn into vile sludge. Soon the tornado engulfs him, coating him and the disgusting remains of his mushrooms. Meanwhile, Russell's friend cheered from the sidelines, as the rapid events unfolded too quickly for them to fully track. Enraged and humiliated, Realism scrambles to his feet and frantically wipes at the slimy mushroom sludge clinging to him. A pained sound escapes him as he reaches for his mushrooms, but the slick mess slides through his fingers, much like his fading chances of defeating Russell. Tormented, he demands to know how Rusty could destroy his precious fungi. Someone must snap him out of it. It's a battle, and Rusty has no emotional attachment to those ghastly mushrooms, unlike Realism. Rusty and his friend watch Realism's ridiculous outburst. Realism quickly regroups and uses a manifest scroll to summon a giant mushroom that emits thick air into the area. Rusty calls it a smoke screen, mocking anyone who would flee the fight he provoked, and the gas, heavier than air, sinks quickly and creates a new danger. Just as expected, the coward bolts, and Rusty and his allies are stunned, unsure why Realism even showed up. Colin shouts to chase him, but Rusty stops them, warning that the released gas could be toxic despite his erratic actions. Realism's status as a master alchemist still poses a serious threat. Rusty quickly uses his alchemy to clear the air and isolate the poison. The air around them warps slightly as Rusty separates the gases. As noted earlier, this alchemy requires intense focus. Carefully, he forms each gas into its own bubble, one containing pure oxygen. Rusty uses a beam of sunlight to ignite the oxygen bubble below, just enough to release a surge of heat. Cautiously, he traps the possibly poisonous purple smoke in a jar so it cannot cause harm. Rusty tells his friends he's going after Realism, while Roget, using her sharp long-distance vision, sees something troubling. She shouts for Rusty to take cover behind them as everyone looks to the horizon, where a swarm of faded, armored salmon charges toward them in a frenzy. Freshly evolved creatures are stampeding, and Rusty finds the timing odd. Debating whether to fight them or take a realistic approach, Colin takes charge, sends Rowan and Eerie to the front to hold off the creatures while he assesses their combat strength. She positions herself to oversee the battle and evacuate non-combatants. After ordering everyone to put survival first, Colin turns to Russell and calls him Master Rust, pledging her full support whether he pursues Realism or stays to fight. Rusty pauses to weigh his options, as his instincts urge him to choose Realism. This could be the fateful moment Rowan foresaw, he thinks. Russell faces a critical choice, whether to chase Realism or stay, and help Colin and the others fend off the monstrous creatures, sweat beading on his face as he grapples with the weight of the decision, and knowing Colin and the others are struggling against flying foes. These armored flying monsters have tough scales. If they lack proper gear or alchemy, they can be overwhelmed, and the battle will likely become entirely defensive. This carries a high risk of casualties. Allowing Realism to slip away creates another serious problem. Fights between alchemists are banned because their unleashed power can devastate the environment. Alchemist duels put participants and nearby civilians at grave risk, so duels to the death are tightly regulated. Rusty knows that if Realism goes unchecked, the harm could be far worse than the current threat. If Realism pulls back and then returns stronger, the danger could grow exponentially. Aware of the risk, Colin puts protecting the camp and its civilians first. She still leaves the decision to Russell. He is confident he will choose wisely at this crucial moment. Having thought it over, Rusty says he'll stay at the camp instead of chasing Realism. He looks at Colin and sees the heavy responsibility she carries. When casualties occur during his pursuit of Realism, Colin, as the camp leader, would bear the grief and regret alone. He knows she would hide how much it affected her. Rusty realizes his duty is here, to protect those who rely on him. Realism, with a smug smile, says they can handle him if he returns. Colin feels relief flood her as she learns Rusty will stay and fight alongside them. Bolstered by his decision, she feels a surge of determination as they brace for the threat together. Rusty braces himself to face the sky salmon, standing firm as he scans the sky. Without warning, Eerie demands that Rusty pursue Realism, but Collins quickly cuts her off. Asserting her authority, she insisted they follow her commands. Eerie agrees grudgingly and says they will act once they are out of Colin's sight. Rusty offers a quiet apology to Eerie, struggling to find the right words. At heart, he doubts the future Eerie foresaw. Looking back, he realizes he has become passive without noticing. Now he has a chance to reshape the future, driven by the trust and hope of Colin and the camp. Rusty is determined to protect what they gave him. Looking up, he sees the sky salmon split into two groups, one heading toward the capital and the other diving toward the camp. Rusty watches, unsure whether this is good news or bad, knowing something in the capital could affect them all, and that uncertainty weighs on him as he prepares for battle. Rusty asks Eerie and Rohit where the non-combatants are. They say they are being led to the food storage room. Armed with this, Rusty makes a smart move and rushes to the camp to gather all the chemical supplies. With no time to spare, he casts a spell and quickly transmutes them using his finest materials. Normally, he can provide resources and make them go as far as possible. These items are too valuable, and he knows he cannot replace them. Saving the people at the camp is worth the cost. It's a small price to pay. Rusty works hard to keep everything clear. Rapid changes are draining his strength at an alarming rate. Alchemy requires precise, needle-like focus, while he juggles multiple chemical processes, and keeping them all under control feels overwhelming. For a moment, he feels himself slipping into unconsciousness. Rusty steadies himself and pushes through exhaustion to finish the spell. He prepares the scrolls to face the skybound foes, forming 9 schools in all. With everything in place, he steps out hoping everyone still stands firm against the approaching danger. Leaving the camp, Rusty looks up and sees Colin slicing through the flying salmon end. Struck by her sleek black full-plate armor, he sees not only her power but also her elegance. Considering the complexities of youth, it becomes clear why Colin has earned the title of war here. Far stronger than most people, she is not bulky. Her heavy full-plate armor and massive sword make up for it. She rules the battlefield with skill and might. Colin spots Rust, hurries to him and asks if everything is ready. Rusty nods to confirm. Pausing to scan the battlefield, he says Colin might have handled it on her own, but she shakes her head. Pointing to the scattered monster eggs, she insists it would have been tough to handle them alone and asks Rusty to take care of them. Rusty says we must wipe out all the monsters at once. Pulling out every scroll he prepared, he begins casting and activates them all at once. Rusty could have destroyed the monsters with polished scrolls, but using them in the camp would cause major harm, so he chooses manifestation scrolls. The monster rushed at Rusty with terrifying speed, moving as one. In an instant they vanish. Rusty sprays a strange chemical blend that either hides the monsters or dissolves them entirely. Eerie and Roy stand in a maze while Rusty explains. Here is a practical use of manifestation. Using a return function, the scrolls send parts of monsters to another realm and then bring them back elsewhere. It's a strange and complex idea, but Rust's confidence makes it hard to doubt. Rust's single move ends the battle. He notices these sky salmon are much bigger than the armored salmon he fought before. Based on his observations, their advanced fins keep these fearsome creatures balanced in flight, and their heart scales appear to contain magical elements. Rusty thinks the Sems soaked up magical energy from the air to generate dynamic lift, and the idea fascinates him. Shortly after, he sets out to destroy the beast and ease Colin's burden. He starts handing out the scrolls. Leighton stands in a rare calm moment, the diligent man who manages the food storeroom, sometimes cooking and sometimes clashing with the team. Leighton has been tending the fallen bees, but their numbers never seem to end. Harkness, a skilled warrior from the combat corps, calls him Commander Leighton and offers to act as bait to draw out and strike the flying salmon. Leighton refuses, saying there is no need to break up their circle. Leighton throws his axe at the salmon to show his determination. Martinez looks to him, waiting for more orders as the terrifying creatures seem endless. Leighton says Lady Colin told them to stand firm, and he trusts her completely despite the dire circumstances. He tells Harkness they made it this far by trusting Colin and will keep doing so. Leighton urges everyone to stay strong, bolstering their morale. Privately, he wonders if they should soon pull back, but he trusts Lady Colin again and keeps fighting. What follows shocks everyone. They stand stunned, mouths open, as a monstrous creature appears. They eat the salmon as they charge toward Leighton. Raising his weapon, he orders everyone to stay alert, but the simulation shows they no longer need to fight. The salmon keep falling apart in the chaos. Leighton suspects Russell's alchemy is to blame. The salmon split apart and came back immediately, even though their weapons had no effect. This is simply the incredible power of Rusty commands. No, if you asked Rust, he'd probably give a dull talk about how knowledge is power and about chemistry. Sorry, alchemy made that possible. Leighton asks a long-haired young man for a report on losses and injuries and feels relieved to learn there were only 12 minor injuries and no deaths. Harkness again calls Leighton commander, which clearly annoys him, and Leighton protests yet again that he's no longer a commander, but people still see him that way. Harkness looks dejected and tells Leighton they no longer feel needed, and Leighton pauses to think before calling Harkness a fool. If they could not evacuate the non-combatants and the salmon broke through immediately, there would have been heavy losses. No matter how you look at it, the fighters are vital to this battle. It's unwise to dwell on your shortcomings. Leighton's sincere words seem to strike a chord with Harkness, known for his tough, serious nature. Leighton emphasizes that a flawless defense is impossible without everyone. While Leighton keeps speaking, someone reports that the mules are under attack. Quickly, he gathers 2 or 3 people and rushes off to deal with the remaining foes. Meanwhile, Harkness realizes that Leighton is the true commander, not by rank but by wise leadership and steady resolve, while he frantically tries to escape from Rust. He cries in pain and torment, suffering he brought on himself, and his wounded pride may be his only real concern. Blinded by anger, he wonders how things went so wrong, but cannot accept responsibility for his downfall. He blames Rusty entirely, saying everything fell apart as soon as Rusty came into his life. Rusty infuriates him as memories rush back. He remembers eagerly showing his mother a basket of blooming mushrooms. They captivated him. His mother found them disgusting and told them to get rid of them before they spread. Both of Realism's parents were skilled alchemists who had grand plans for their son. Their intense pressure and high expectations may have led to his downfall. This sounds like a classic villain origin where overbearing parents played a key role. Despite the obstacles, Wilson pushed on and rose to lead the Army's alchemy department, but seeing everyone praise young Rust triggered his rage. After earning his rank through relentless effort, he had to watch someone naturally talented get the admiration he wanted. Lost in thought, his grip on reality begins to unravel, rusted and cursing. He swears that everyone who caused him pain will suffer greatly, vows to drive them into despair and shame them all, and his hatred for Rusty grows stronger. Fueled by the belief that everyone thinks Rusty is better because of his natural talent. Realism looks at his knee, sees strange scars, and panics. Trying to stay friendly, he wonders how these marks got there, his head spinning. Desperate, he drinks several potions. The potions have no effect. Frustrated, he uses up his entire supply, but nothing changes. His body seems to have become resistant to the potions he relied on. Realism faces many challenges. Frustration deepens his despair as his thoughts spiral, and he thinks of returning to the association, where he knows they will provide high-quality potions, so he must get to the capital quickly. Determined, he casts a spell to summon a parasitic, transmuted creature called the Mixer Meat King. The hideous beast engulfs him, reducing Realism to a hot air balloon with only his head visible and no lens in sight. The scene is both funny and disturbing, showing how strange his situation is, but he still orders the creature to take him to the capital, and unlike his junior colleagues, the Mixer goes to meet King Abe. Swiftly heading toward the association, Realism reaches the capital, climbs out of the strange Mixer Meat King, and stumbles onto firm ground. Desperate for potions, he fears his improvised appearance will draw the guards' attention. Walking the streets in torn clothes, he hears people talking about a recent battle. Curiosity pushes him to reach the corner ahead, where he will find the Alchemist Association and get the potions he needs. Around the corner, he finds the Alchemist Association's building in ruins, leaving him stunned and shaking with disbelief. Realism reflects on his devotion to that place and feels like everything he worked for is falling apart. A shadowy figure emerges from the rubble, cloaked in darkness. The stranger creates a barrier that isolates them, then advances with eerie intensity. The hooded figure studies Realism closely, noting its spread. He says the SAM attack that destroyed the association was a coincidence but worked to his advantage. Realism, confused, asks who he is. The cloaked man shrugs it off and calls himself unimportant. Thanks to Realism for sending faulty magic circuits. Before Realism can respond, the hooded figure seizes him by the face, lifts him easily, and drains Realism's life force. Praising the demon inside him, he notes that Realism has a knack for fungal magic. A flick of his finger makes Realism's wounds flare and sends him into agonizing pain. Suddenly, the hooded figure warps reality into a monster before vanishing. Moments later, a crowd gathers around Realism, who is now unconscious. Spores spread from Realism's body, signaling his transformation into a monstrous version of himself. Alarmed, the crowd panics and scatters. Barely aware of his surroundings, Realism is confused about why people are fleeing and reaches out for help. Soldiers arrive, aim their weapons at him, and chaos erupts as Realism struggles with his new existence. Unaware of the threat he now poses, Captain Harold orders his troops to aim at the demon. Moments later, gunfire fills the air as everyone aims for Realism. Harold watched the bullets ricochet harmlessly off the alchemist's body, just as the reports had warned. Realism has turned into a demon, and magic bullets are useless against it. Seeing the situation, Harold stops the attack immediately. They're already short-handed, and if Realism is a demon, more could be hiding in the Alchemist Association. He commands his troops to equip magic circuits that convert elements into a single focused fire blast. Realism desperately tries to prove he's still human, unaware that no one will believe him. In an instant, the soldiers fire a volley as Harold watches intently. Frustrated, he orders his men to stop firing and draw swords. The plan is simple. Facing a line of resolute soldiers, Realism feels a wave of fear. The thought of his impending fate throws him into a panic, and before anyone can reach him, he slips into the sewer. Captain Harold freezes, staring in disbelief at the empty spot where the demon stood moments earlier. At camp, Colin reports the damage from the sky salmon attacks and the expected profit from the collected magic stones. She says she intends to honor those who excel. He calls Orion row forward. Colin praises them for quickly assess the strength of the sky salmon and share key details. Despite the danger, she then spots Leitna, who fought tirelessly to protect the fighters and made sure no one was hurt. The retired nurse's efforts kept the camp's spirited members in check, showing his leadership remained sharp. At last, Colin praises Rusty for quickly neutralizing the sky salmon without causing further harm to the camp. He averted disaster, and Colin offers her sincere thanks. Surprised, the alchemist watches the whole camp begin to clap for him as the cheers echo. Regret over realism slipping away begins to fade, replaced by a small, genuine smile. Colin says she has filed a formal complaint with the Alchemist Association over realism's attack. Many likely saw the sky salmon attacking the capital, she notes, inflicting major damage on the Alchemist Association. Rusty can't stop thinking about his old home, and though he never planned to return, the news of the trouble there stirred something in him. The royal castle is also in trouble, so he decides they should not wait for orders. Instead, they should act now and start distributing the magic crystals. Colin agrees, even though it means more work for Rust, and he is happy about it. He proposed it. A few days later, Colin's camp meets again, and she announces the next shipment of Kaguro fruit will arrive soon. They will focus on building a path to their future. The lord of the neighboring dominions supports the plan and the colonizers, and everyone will sort out the details soon, relying on their ongoing support. Enthusiastic applause fills the air before the crowd disperses. Later, Rusty finally makes it to his tent, relieved after a tiring day. So many people stop to talk to him on the way that he felt a bit shy, since he's not used to that kind of attention. His eyes land on the baby beast in its cage. He is stunned to see it now has wings, and its skin has completely shed. Amazed, he starts to think the creature is a dragon rather than a lizard. He has never seen a dragon before, after all. He realizes the little beast was probably a baby dragon all along, and now he isn't sure what to do. Hungry, the baby dragon immediately rejects the brick Rusty offers. Rusty figures the dragon wants meat and remembers he has monster scraps saved for crafting. Seeing the baby dragon staring at the potions, he decides to try something. With Rose's help, the alchemist gives the baby dragon a small, safe dose of potion and is relieved when it drinks it quickly. Most creatures like Kippo would find the taste awful. Rust, still intrigued, asks if the little dragon wants more potion. Before using a transcribe scroll to check its condition, proceed with caution. He tells Rose to keep watch over the dragon in case something goes wrong. He flips through some reading material on the topic, then opens the scroll and finds no harmful effects. He looks back at the baby dragon, confused. Maybe it's time to give it a name. At lunch, Rusty casually tells the commander he might have a dragon in his camp. Dragons are mostly mythical, and if this really is a dragon, it would be the first sighting in ages. The alchemist says he's not completely sure. Still, he remembers how clever the beast seemed when he first rescued it, which led him to think it might be a dragon. Colin remains unconvinced, pointing out that refusing grass does not prove the beast is intelligent. Rusty agrees and plans to study its intelligence further. Colin smiles, senses he has already decided. The alchemist says he first considered freeing the creature if it was a dragon. He thinks he could form a bond with it. Colin is confused when Rusty talks about forming a contract with the dragon and asks if that's just a fairy tale idea. The alchemist says fairy tales are mostly fiction but contain some truth, and Colin wonders if contracts could really exist. Rusty reassures her he'll take every precaution before trying anything, and Colin approves the experiment. But before Rusty gets carried away, playfully she insists on being there when it happens. He grins in agreement. Knowing Colin is genuinely curious, he tells him to let her know when he's ready. Rusty teases because she's only interested in the spectacle. Colin happily admits she's simply thrilled to see it. Later, Colin arrives at the alchemist's tent with Rowan and Ariento. Rusty asks why they're there, and Rohan says they're on guard duty, which reminds him she has been wary of the beast from the start and makes him wonder if she dislikes lizards. Rowan leans in toward the baby beast for a better look, but Rusty quickly stops her and reassures her it's safe, and she apologizes softly. The alchemist notices her eyes have lost their usual magical glow, so her foresight is not active. This suggests a fight with the baby dragon is unlikely. Rusty instructs the sisters to stay behind Hippo. Note that Colin can handle herself because she's the strongest here. Colin then asks how he plans to form a contract with the dragon. If it really is a dragon, weak alchemy won't work and stronger alchemy could hurt it, he explains. With alchemy ruled out, he asks the girls if they know about primordial magic. Eerie says it pertains to life and uses blood as a medium. Rusty says his senior studied primordial magic, and Rusty is now using those ideas. A senior told him ancient tales of humans and dragons could be linked to this magic. The dragon's call cuts in. Prompt Ari to remind her that the alchemist can ramble if not stopped. Arya apologizes, although she liked his explanation. Focused on the task, Rusty turns to the beast and begins the experiment, asking Rose to unlock the cage that holds it. He can tell the creature is a dragon despite its youth. He feels anxious because it could easily hurt him if it attacked, even though Rose could intervene. He offers the baby dragon a sip of potion, prompting Colin to say aloud he suspects it's bait for the contract, and before she can say more, the other girls quickly quiet her as the little beast drinks the costly potion. Rusty regrets not bringing concentrated magic element solutions essential for making high-quality potions. Making them is hard, and his mind briefly drifts to the solutions he left at the Alchemist Association, hoping they are secure. Refocusing, the alchemist remembers that forming a contract is tied to the dragon's primordial magic. As told in fairy tales and myths, moments later he draws a sharp knife. Tell the jurors it's made from horned horn. He explains that according to legend the contract ritual starts with a human offering blood, his face set with determination. He sets the knife against his wrist and prepares to make a small cut. Rusty draws blood from his wrist with the knife, letting capillary action pull it along the blade's etched patterns as he forms a blood crest, while giving his name and purpose. After bonding with the dragon, something surprising happens. After his declaration, ancient symbols appear before him. The sight is startling and confusing, but the symbols clearly mean something. Seeing his reaction, Colin asks if he's noticing something. The alchemist became even more confused. He checks with the girls and finds they see nothing. He describes seeing a polygonal plate form in front of him and admits he doesn't know what it is. The alchemist studies the plates closely and notes that they resemble alchemy rings, but probably are not. They look almost fluid, and the dragon seems to be urging him to touch them. Holland asks Ari if her magic eye picks up anything, but only Rusty can see the odd phenomenon. This could be the primordial magic they've been talking about. Meanwhile, Rusty faces show completely unfamiliar symbols. Rusty wonders whether touching different parts might reveal different meanings and what the strange letters mean, and he knows he must be cautious. Still, his curiosity drives him to take risks. Touching the glowing symbols, he watches them change shape. He wonders if the number of symbols comes from the pattern they form. He's unsure about their system or what might happen if he keeps touching them. He watches the baby dragon and notices it seems to understand what's happening. The alchemist sees a glow at his wrist wound and touches the plates again, making the whole tent shine brightly. As the light fades, Rusty discovers a fiery tattoo on his hand. Now a toddler, the baby dragon still has the same design on its chest. Stunned by the sudden growth, he starts stroking the dragon and decides it needs a name. Then he blends safe from sacred and look from one who flies. Calling it Saluk makes it clear he has successfully formed a contract with the dragon. Late at night, Colin surprises Rusty by saying she will visit his tent. Her late arrival is unusual, and the alchemist is mildly surprised. Carrying a bottle, she mentions they haven't hung out much lately. Stepping forward, she carefully selects a utensil from the box, aware that Rusty is picky about those used for experiments. The alchemist smiles and accepts her gesture, saying he can't refuse, and assures her the utensils he uses are thoroughly cleaned and safe. When Colin asks about snacks, she admits she brought some without Rusty noticing and shows him a bag full of meat and fish. Impressed by her thoughtfulness, Rusty asks Rose to set up a small dining area. A few minutes later, they're seated at the table. Colin pours him a drink and sees Saluk wandering freely around the tent. She holds out the drink to the dragon. It flies to the alchemist's shoulder to rest, and Colin is amazed by their strong connection. She wonders if his potions caused it while watching Sailor drink one. She declines the treat because she knows most potions taste like grass and are usually unpleasant. Rusty acts offended by Colin's remarks about his potions. He knows she's only teasing. They raise their glasses to toast new bonds. The alchemist is deeply grateful to Colin. If not for her invitation, he might still be at the Alchemist Association. Trapped in a routine or following a different path. Thinking about how much he owes her, Rusty drinks with joy, but his contentment turns to shock when the drink makes him choke. He asks Colin what that is. It's called free spirit, she says. Colin explains the drink can ignite anything. She didn't try it herself, thinking it would be a waste, but it's clearly strong. Seeing Rusty struggle, Rose suggests diluting it with water. Mixing the drink, he keeps sipping to get used to the new flavor, then turns to Colin to hear her thoughts. He was right that she hadn't come just for the drink. While Colin speaks, the alchemist remains eager to learn why she really came. The commander brings up the road construction project she mentioned earlier while pouring another drink and says they are ready to start the plans in a few days. Colin says she hopes Rusty will help with the road project. Rusty listens carefully, knowing the road is important for their future. Shaken at first by the strong drink, he finds a new sense of purpose. Rusty eagerly agrees to help with the road construction. She is amazed by how well Colin handles her drinks. Despite her duties as a feudal lord, he chuckles as she offers the dragon a drink to try to bond with it. Believing this is what friends do, he stays with her to enjoy the evening. The next morning, Rusty is not feeling as upbeat. A change he feels in himself after the contract worries him, though he notices no physical change. The transcribed scroll displays physical data. He uses a pendulum to assess non-physical aspects. While forming theories about the strange plates that appeared during the contract, the alchemist suspects the world holds more than just magical elements. Frustration grows when he says, "Look," to summon the plate again. The dragon can't do it. Rusty suspects the plates appeared only for the contract. Before he can think further, Arya arrives and signals it is time to start road construction. While Rusty and Eerie ride on Hippo, the alchemist tells Saylook to stay with Rose until they return. He is surprised when Sailor insists on coming along by perching on his shoulder. The alchemists agree to bring the dragon and head toward their destination. Along the way, they cast casual glances at the dragon flying beside them and comment on its elegance. Rusty nods, admitting he didn't expect dragons to be so graceful, and is impressed by how effortlessly Saylook soared through the air. Era says he has to be the first person in centuries to bond with the dragon. She says his knowledge goes beyond alchemy, and that during the contract ritual, they were all unsure what was happening. Rusty shrugs it off, saying it just sort of happened. His thoughts kept returning to the mysterious numbers and the semi-transparent plate he had seen, and he only briefly told the girls about it, so being the only one who had seen the mythical symbols left him frustrated as they traveled. Rusty keeps replaying the odd phenomena he witnessed, and the mysterious plate and its symbols appear to hold the key to the primordial magic tied to the contract, and despite his inner conflict, the alchemist is determined to learn what those symbols mean. With time and more experiments, he hopes to find answers and better understand the magic linking him to Saylook, but for now he focuses on the road construction ahead, knowing the journey is just starting. Rusty knows reproducing results is crucial. Without that, others may dismiss his findings as fantasy. He smiles at Saylook, pleased to see the dragon enjoying itself. Arya suddenly warns him that monsters are coming from below, spotted through her magic eye. Swiftly, she readies her spear for combat, prompting the alchemist to admire her quick response. Eric says she barely beat a tough multi-monster. Worried she might be rusty, since she had once handled an armored salmon with ease. Rusty orders Salak to fly up, while Ariel warns of 2 more monsters approaching, and he steers the hippo to the right. A mutilated creature appears before he can react. But suppose Look dives down and defeats it with ease. Relief and amazement wash over the alchemist at the dragon's swift action. Both humans stand stunned by the dragon's speed and strength. Everyone grows more amazed as they watch its remarkable attack. Hearing stories about dragons is one thing, but seeing one in action is completely different. As they approach the fallen monster, Rusty studies it closely. He recognizes it as a chimera, an odd mix of a tiny mouse and a centipede. It may have mushrooms sprouting from its abdomen. A grouping of these 4 creatures is rare and unfamiliar in this region. The alchemist believes it may be a new species. Learn what draws Hippo and Sailor's attention. The hippo's signs make him uneasy. Rusty senses something odd about the creature and checks the transcribed scroll, which shows no traces of poison or threat. He considers taking the monster for further study, but realizes Hippo strongly opposes it. He suggests burning the creature to remove any risk. He asks Ari if she can pause to deal with this, and she agrees to help. The alchemists recommend she keep watching instead. A small amount of potion is applied to the hippos and Salix's limbs to protect them from any harm. Rusty sets the monster ablaze and watches his flames engulf it. Watching the fire, he briefly thinks he sees something stirring in the flames. Ari's voice pulls him back, saying they are ready to resume their journey. He turns away, leaves the ashes behind, and prepares to continue their mission. After dealing with the monster, the alchemist and his companions press on, still thinking about the strange creature.